Welcome everybody to our panel discussion today on Let's Talk About Online Learning, a conversation with EMU professors. We know that many of you here listening are going to be taking a lot, if not all of your classes online this semester. And what we figured we'd do is get together a bunch of experts here who have done a lot of online teaching, who have some good ideas about how to do it effectively, and most importantly, who have some good advice to offer you for how to do this well, for how to be good and effective online learners, how to do well in your classes, and how to make this a successful semester in the face of some very interesting and rather unique challenges. So what I would like to do, so I'm Jeff Bernstein, I'm a professor of political science here at Eastern, and I will be moderating this discussion and hopefully learning as much as all of you do about how to do online teaching well from my colleagues here. I'd like to let you know that we have a chat box open here where you can put any questions in that you have, and after our panelists speak for a few minutes about their experiences and their advice and guidance to you, I will take some questions and throw them at our panelists, and we can all learn a little bit of stuff together today. So it's great to have you with us, and I'm looking forward to spending this time with you. So I will introduce the members of our panel now and then turn it over to them to say their words of wisdom for you. So our first panelist for today will be Professor Harriet Lindsay from the Department of Chemistry. And she will be followed by Professor Michael McVey from the College of Education, Department of Teacher Education. And then Professor Jessica Elton from Communications, Media, and Theater Arts. Cassandra Berrigan from the School of Social Work, and Professor Vernalise Carrasquillo from the College of Engineering Technology. So I will now turn it over to Professor Lindsay.
Well, hi everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's great to have an opportunity to interact with you, such as it is, and be able to field your questions. So as Professor Bernstein indicated, I'm a professor in chemistry. I teach mostly sophomore courses. And so in those classes, what I have done is done what's called a flipped classroom, which some of you may be familiar with from high school. So my students watch videos before they come to class, or to class via Zoom, which is what we do now. And then when they get there, they break off into small groups and work on problems that are related to the topics that were in the videos. We get a lot of interaction that way. So I've done this a couple of times now since we've shut down due to COVID. And one thing that I've been struck by is the level of interaction I still get with my students, which is very, very important to me. I feel like it's an effective way to teach the course, but as I said, more importantly, I get to know my students through our interaction during our virtual class time. And I'll kick it to the next person with that and save the rest for the Q&A session.
Sure, I'll be brief. My name is Michael McVey. I was a high school teacher for 20 years and then joined the ranks of higher education, and I've been in higher ed for 20 years. And starting in about 1998, I began my first experiments with online learning, and it's been a wonderful adventure ever since. I believe I've used every learning management system available on the planet, plus a few that no longer exist. And they all have pluses, they all have minuses, but there are common elements throughout all of them that good teachers can take advantage of. I've been teaching a course called LTech 330. It's a technology course for pre-cert teachers, and some of them do it completely online. I've never met them. Others do it remotely, where I do async or synchronous Zoom chats. And I've also an entire master's program in the online version. So I know it can work. I know it can be effective. And I'm here to help work out some of the kinks you're all having in your own experiences.
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us. I'm Dr. Jessica Elton. I'm a faculty member in the School of Communication, Media, and Theater Arts. I teach communication courses. I have been teaching at Eastern for this is my 12th year, and I've been teaching online for several years. I teach one of our compressed format courses, so we cram 15 weeks of content into 7 weeks, and I'll be teaching that course again this upcoming fall. as well as 3 other courses in asynchronous format, 2 of which are our upper level 400 level courses, and then another 100 level course. I really enjoy online teaching. I think that there are certainly some challenges that it can present for students and for instructors, but it's very easy to sort of work out those kinks and have a really positive experience. So hopefully we can answer questions and get ready for the fall.
And let me put in just one more plug that we do have the question window open, and do please feel free if you have any questions to pop them into that question window.
And I'm Dr. Cassandra Berrigan. I am with the School of Social Work and the Aging Studies Program Director. We have lots of online classes in both of the programs. I've been teaching online like Professor McVey since almost the beginning of online teaching, and we have a lot of really amazing technology that's available now that we're putting into our classrooms. Not only some of the learning software and some of the learning apps, but some of the apps that you're familiar with, and that can help you be able to participate in class in a way that you're familiar with. I think that most of us who are teaching this year have become very flexible in what we are doing for our assignments, and we're having them be more relatable to what you are working through at home and your situations being at home rather than in a classroom.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Vernalise Castillo. I've been at Eastern this will be my 5th year. Before I got my PhD, I used to work in industry as a product design engineer, and that is the department that I teach at right now, the Product Design Engineering Technology department. So I teach mostly freshman courses in the product design field, and I normally run my class similarly to Dr. Lindsay, where my students either read or watch videos before coming to class, and then in class is very much active. I only talk to some of the class for about 15 minutes, and then they're off to work. And I am going to try to replicate that process virtually this semester.
Excellent. Thank you all for the introductions. Normally, when you ask professors to speak for about 3 minutes or so, you usually need to budget about 20 minutes each. So I really, really want to commend my colleagues, because that'll give us a lot of time to go to student questions, and we're already getting some. So let me throw out first something. This is vocabulary that I think all of us on the faculty have been throwing around for so long, but it is worth just defining it for students. What is the difference between synchronous online and asynchronous online classes? Anyone want to jump in on that one?
I think we could all answer, so you might have to point to somebody.
Michael, you started us off.
Hey, so that because you picked on me, I get to tell the joke. Usually professors, it takes us 20 minutes just to clear our throats. So you're quite right about that. Synchronous means anything that's happening live. Like right now, this is live. This is a synchronous experience. However, when we hit the record button and you look at this later, we move into the world of asynchronous, out of time. It's very much like those message boards you used to see in the grocery store, or a discussion board. You'll see something up, and then you can respond to the question at your own pace. It's very much suited to your own schedule, your own personal. Whereas synchronous, you have to be in the seat or have your cell phone in front of you at a precise time in order to make the live chat or the live video work. Did that pretty well cover it, Dr. Bernstein?
Works for me. Panel, you're good with Professor McVey's answer?
Oh, good.
Excellent. So let me throw out a more sort of general question here. How do you advise students if they're taking, say, an asynchronous class where they don't necessarily need to be in front of the computer on Tuesday at 12:30, but they're really on their own? How do you help them to succeed under those circumstances? throws a lot of responsibility to the student. What are some good practices for students to do in those circumstances?
If I can go first, I'm dealing with that right now with my daughter, who's in high school right now. She started school this week, and she's only having very few synchronous classes. And what I've told her, the same thing that I would tell any other student, find at what time that working for that class would work for you and put it on your schedule. And you are going to treat it as if you were going to class. And you will always sit down and work on that class at that time exactly the same way. Because if you keep putting it off and off and off and later, deadlines are going to come by and you're not going to be done.
Other thoughts from folks?
I wholeheartedly agree. Schedules, a regular schedule is everything. And if you're, check your work schedule, your family schedule, and make sure you build in your teaching schedule how many hours per course, but absolutely. And if you can sync it up when the professor is available online for virtual office hours, even better.
So one of the things that I know some students worry about, and to be honest, as a faculty member, I worry about this, is it's so easy, relatively speaking, to make connections with a professor in a classroom. You see them physically in the same room every day. It's very easy on your way out of the room to strike up a conversation. Most of the time when I teach, my office is just 2 floors up from my classroom. So it's very easy to follow your professor to their office and really have these conversations. I find that making these connections with professors are one of the most important things students can do as undergrads when they're here. How would you advise the students who are listening here how can they get to know their professors? How can they make connections and really view us as more than just a 2-dimensional box that sits on a screen in front of them? What can we do? What can students do to make that work better?
I'd like to take that one. I think that students can not only be engaged in the things that are happening in the classroom, whether it's a fully online class or a synchronous class, but then also there are office hours, and being able to I think that most of us are allowing for quite a bit of flexibility when it comes to things like office hours and emails, and sending an email to your professor and saying, do you have 15 minutes to talk? And you could be able to set something up. I know that professors are all going to be working to make those connections with you, but just like having a connection outside the classroom, being able to feel comfortable approaching your professors to be able to do that is no different online. And it's just our mechanisms are a little bit different. And, some professors, like I said, are having very open office hours that you can just kind of knock on the virtual door and pop in. So see if that's available. Otherwise, just send an email, and everybody will be willing to meet with you just as they would on campus.
And I know, Professor Lindsay, you've talked about, and we've had conversations about how you felt very good about your ability to get to know your students and work with them, even in an online format. What have you managed to do to make that work well?
Yeah, so one thing I've done, and some colleagues in my department have done, is to have office hours right after class. So I teach a synchronous class, and so students have to show up at the scheduled time on Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, and then after class I have office hours. So it makes it really easier. It sort of it lowers the barrier to perceived access to me. If all they have to do is stay put, and we can have a conversation just about how they're doing, how the class is going, or they can get help on specific kinds of things. So I've certainly encouraged my other professor colleagues to do the same thing. But to echo what Professor Barragan said, you certainly want to, we miss interaction just as much as you miss interaction. So don't feel intimidated or worried at all about contacting us, because we want to talk with you. So please take advantage of office hours and come. We don't want to just be sitting in our room all by ourselves. So.
Technologically, I know we've heard some ideas here, but how are the folks on this panel handling office hours? Are you making Zoom links available to students? Are you working through Google Hangout? I know a number of the questions that I've seen in the box are asking sort of the technical challenges for doing office hours in this. Professor Elton, you want to start off with what you're doing?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that I've done, I'll be holding Zoom office hours, but I've also set up a Google phone number for myself so students can contact me directly. And so that's, I know for, obviously if a student calls maybe at 1 o'clock in the morning, I won't answer, but it is a way for me that if my Zoom office hours don't work, or if it's an issue that either they're not comfortable discussing via email or they prefer not, discuss via email, I will be able to talk to them on the phone about that. And so I think that's one of the things that I've done. Often I find in asynchronous courses, students may be more comfortable with email, and that's okay. I try to get back to students as quickly as I can. If I'm on my computer, it can be sometimes within a matter of minutes. But just really trying to, along with Zoom, email, the phone, trying to come up with as many ways that I can provide for students to reach out to me if they need the help.
Professor Barragan, what are some of the things that you are doing and to make your office hours accessible to students?
So one of the things that I'm doing is using a scheduling system that is an app that students, I have my office hours are listed as my working hours because it's a scheduling app. So the language isn't really, geared towards the classroom, but essentially students can come in and make their own appointment. So if I tell them that I'm available, they can go in and make that appointment. I also, I teach graduate level classes as well. So, and depending on the size of the class, I will also tell students that if they see the little green dot next to my name in Google when you're in your email, feel free to send me a message if you have a real quick question. And that's a really fast way for students to get a response if they see you sitting there, because the little green dot means that you are in your email. You have it open. So I have encouraged students to do that as well.
And I'm assuming, but just I know we've gotten a couple of questions about this. When you have the Google Hangout number or the Zoom office hour links or whatnot, is this kind of stuff typically put in the syllabus that you give to students? Is that how students typically will find that information from you?
In fact, it's on the very top page. In addition to the syllabus, it's on the top page that the landing page for my class. So they should, by the end of the semester, they should know my Google or my Zoom address by heart. Some of them will. I did have a quick comment about that. I set up office hours over the summer. I taught 2 sections and I had 0 visitors. Well, I had 1 visitor, and I set up the appointments using Google Calendar, which is easy enough to do. But I realized that when students are working on something, they want a response fairly quickly. If they're stuck, they're in a bit of a crisis. So I just had them send me an email if you want to set up a meeting. We'll work out a time. And I know it's a bit more awkward, but based on the traffic I've got, I think I can handle it. In addition, I use an application, a third-party app called remind.com. K-12 teachers are using it like crazy. The kids can basically insert their own text phone numbers. I never get to see them. But if I need to send a message out, I can do that. One click, it goes to everybody. And if they want to write back to me on Remind, I'll get a little bing, and they say, oh, somebody's stuck at that moment. I'm happy to help. Sometimes it's a real quick fix. Sometimes it's not so much. And in those cases, we have extended office hours. I did want to say one thing about email. You all said, don't worry, send emails. Students are terrified. They don't want to bother us. However, I did have one situation where a student got the all-time record one semester of 206 emails to me. I know the last 4 emails were a bit silly, but 206 emails. and that's okay. You know, every email is an opportunity to improve clarification or clarify the course instructions, know a student a little bit. I got to know that student very well.
I have told my students for this semester that because I am not physically seeing you in class, you can expect even more emails than normal. And that is just the way we're going to be doing business now. But one other thing, and students, do please heed this advice. When we are emailing you, we are using your MyEmish emails. That's what we have in our system. So when we are clicking email class, that's where it's going. So do please be aware that whatever you're using for your own email, make sure that you are either checking your Emish email or make sure that your Emish email is forwarding to whatever email you're using, because we are going to be heavily reliant upon email to make this work this semester. So let me throw out a question here. We've gotten a few of the questions that are coming in that deal with technology challenges. On a good day, you do your synchronous Zoom class or you record your asynchronous material and it's put out there and the students can get access to it and everybody's email can work. But I can just tell the students that in the 10 minutes before we were setting this up, we had one microphone problem. I needed to leave where I was in my house and go to another room to get better internet. Technology is going to fail us and it's going to disappoint us at some time. What can you tell students who are worried about the technology and worried that something's going to cut out at the wrong time or they're going to miss a class that they really needed to be part of? What can you say to kind of give students advice about that and maybe calm things down a little bit? Vernalise, you want to, Professor Karaskia, do you want to start that?
Sure. So at least what I will do is I will record the Zoom conferences that I will have so that then I can put them on Canvas for students to review if they missed them. I am worried about that for myself for sure. There will be 4 people in my house trying to use Zoom at the same time, probably, at least sometimes. So that is definitely a concern. But I would say just email your professors as soon as you know that you're having trouble, that you can't connect. Let them know. Don't just disappear from the course and let your professors wondering what's happening. It is on you to let us know what is happening, that you're having trouble, and see that way we can see if we can help you in some way.
Harriet, Professor Lindsay, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I would echo what Vernalise just said, and also given what Jeff just said, the technology issues that we had before starting up, we were certainly empathetic. So we're most of us are reasonable people. You know, we're going to make accommodations for these things because they happen to us too. So again, I want to echo communication is important. So if you do have difficulties, let us know as soon as possible. We can't help you if we don't know about the situation, but we're really here to help. We will try to get through this together and by offering help to each other when we have technology issues.
It's
I
like I tell
really
my,
do want to emphasize.
well, it's like I tell my undergraduates, I'm sorry, well, like I tell my undergraduates in teacher ed, they're going to be using technology, you should always have a plan B available. Okay, so example, on Monday, I'm planning with my synchronous remote class to try a Kahoot. It may not work at all, a Kahoot quiz, and some of you are aware of them. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. I've got oodles of other options. And if and we're going to tell our students, hey, this may not work. We're going to use the F word here, flexible. We're all flexible. We have to be flexible. That is the F word, right? Okay, anyway.
I actually put on my syllabus for this semester that, you know, we need to be aware that the technology might work. And if it does, you might hear me saying certain words out loud, but we're all going to figure this one out together.
Flexible,
So,
flexible, right?
That's right. Oh, flexible. So a lot of questions are coming in about the Canvas online system, and that's obviously something many of us have used for our in-person classes, but now that our classes are largely going to be remote or online, asynchronous, synchronous, I think all of us are going to be using the Canvas system to some way. What are some of the things that you're using Canvas for and that you're going to be expecting your students to be able to use Canvas for? Professor Elton, you want to start us off on this one?
Yeah, well, I guess since I'm teaching all asynchronous courses this semester, everything for the most part that we do will be on Canvas. Students will be viewing content, maybe pre-recorded videos, maybe links to readings, assignments will be on Canvas, assignment submissions will be through Canvas. Students can even email their classmates and professors through Canvas. You can access Zoom that way. And so we'll be used like pretty much everything with the exception of maybe a textbook and some additional outside resources. Everything students are going to need will be there. Sort of in reference to the other question about maybe technology issues is for students to write down the Canvas 24/7 tech report or tech support number in case there's any hiccups with some of the more technical aspects. I think often with professors, we can help with the content, but like if there's something wrong with like Canvas access, sometimes it's because we've made a mistake, and we do make mistakes, but sometimes because there's something going on weird with Canvas. So I think getting very familiar with their 24/7 line, and I call it a lot. So yeah, a lot of my stuff will be there. And I think for students who aren't super comfortable with Canvas, just that first week, taking a lot of time to kind of look at each of your different courses and kind of spend some time looking at what are the things that you're going to need to use. Do you need to maybe take some time to be familiar with it? You can reach out to your professors and ask questions if anything seems a little unfamiliar. So yeah.
And I will say my own experience is typically when there's a problem with Canvas, it's about 80% chance that it's something I forgot to do, forgetting to make an assignment public. So do reach out to your professors if something isn't working, but please find that helpline and take advantage of it because they're really good on the helpline, and we're decent at the technology by now. And if we weren't decent at the technology 6 months ago, we are by now, but they know more than we do about that stuff. Professor Karaskia?
Yeah, I was going to add, I believe I think I've seen on the Center for E-Learning some basic training for students somewhere. So I recommend that you all look through it, especially for the freshman student that may have never used Canvas before. Since I teach mostly freshman courses, I have realized in the last 2 years that students really don't know how to use Canvas when they come to my class for the first day. And I've always been very intensive on my Canvas use. So I started kind of telling students, these are the things that I expect you to do. But in case your professor doesn't realize that that is the case, you should spend some time learning how to use Canvas, using the resources that the university has for you. And one big thing that I think a lot of students miss is that if you submit an assignment and you submit files into it, and then you realize that you forgot one document and you add the second document, it will delete whatever you did before. So my story for that is make sure after you submit that you review what you submitted is exactly what you needed to submit. That is the #1 problem that I encounter with my students.
If I can add,
very good advice.
If I can add on to that as well, the students are very good at working through and doing assignments and that, and then they get their grade back, they look at the grade, and that's it. I write comments. A lot of us write comments. And when I mentioned this to a student once, she said, "Oh, isn't that quaint?" And I have a technique to make sure that if there's like a crisis, they haven't shared the document with me or I can't open it for some reason, I give them a grade of 1 out of whatever. And that's just enough to make their hair stand on end and reach out to me. And I've even made a little video about, hey, why did I get this 1? You got it because there was a technical problem. 1 is a good grade. 1 means you can resubmit and sort out the issue. It's technical. And we almost need a special letter grade for a technical problem. Happy to grade it as soon as we overcome the technical problem. So my advice to students, read the comments you get back attached to your grade. And who knows, it might just, they might be really good things too, right? I got a 25 out of 25. Professor said wonderful things about you. That's wonderful. Read it, enjoy it.
The only problem though is, unlike, if we're doing paper copies, it's hard to, tape that computer feedback onto the refrigerator. If you're getting great grades on a computerized assignment, but we'll figure that out. One of my favorite, I know I used to use paper. One of my favorite stories is when I gave an assignment and I made the assignment out of 100 points. But when I graded it, in my head, I thought it was a 50-point assignment. So I gave a student, a 45, thinking I gave him a 45 out of 50, which would be a good solid A-. And the student actually got a 45, which meant they failed the assignment. I know that many people say that students don't use email, but let me tell all of you here, in that moment, students use email very, very, very quickly. And it goes back to something I said earlier, that 80% of the Canvas-related issues that happen in my class, the fault lies right here.
And I think
so
students, I was going to say really quickly, I think if students do see things, at least for me, I love it when my students point it out, because we might make mistakes. I mean, we do, professors make mistakes. And so if they see something and it is, we've only factored a grade for, say, out of 50 points when it's really worth 100, send us a nice email and let us know, hey, I think there was a mistake, or I see a typo on this page or something. I always love to know that I made, an error so I can go back and fix it.
Yeah, I'm always thinking I published something and I didn't, so students email me to, where's that thing
we
you
do
said
our best, but we screw up.
Yeah.
And I will just tell the students that from our perspective and the way Canvas looks to us, we can create an assignment, we can save it, we can put it up there with all the bells and whistles, and somehow it seems it's hidden on a screen, and maybe it's just for me, but that little button always seems to move around and never be in the same place twice, and it's that button we have to hit to publish that assignment so our students can see it. And yeah, I've made that error many times. I do want to point out to everybody here that we are recording this session and that it will be sent out to people who have registered for it, and that they will also be addressing any of the unanswered questions in writing after the webinar. I know we're getting a lot of questions and trying to answer as many as we can, but there are some we are missing, so that will be handled after we are done here. So I want to throw out a question that a number of people are asking us about. How are we doing exams this semester? For many of us, exams have traditionally been sort of an in-class, come to the class, sit down, sharpen number 2 pencil and work on the exam. That option is gone. So how are people doing exam questions? Professor Barragan, you want to start us off on this one?
Sure. I have revamped how I'm doing exams a little bit this semester. I think that for the courses, depending on the course that you're taking, there might be an opportunity to do like an oral exam where you can respond to a question that the professor sends you, that there are online options through Canvas. There is an exam feature in Canvas that your professor may enable for you to do. You can do timed exams. Level of security can depend from being very secure, where you have to take the test with your webcam on, and you have a certain limited time, which is as close to a classroom as we can get. But I suspect that a lot of us are doing things that are a little bit more flexible in some ways, when content is something that's more applicable, that you can either do an oral presentation or do something in writing over the traditional exam. So, but there will be a mix of everything this semester, and that's what I'm doing. Some of the more traditional exams, quizzes, and then adjusting and revising some of the other things that would typically be done in a classroom.
Professor Karaskia, what types of things are you doing for exams this term?
So I am not changing a whole lot. I use Canvas for all my exams. So I will continue using it. The one thing that I may try to do, I was considering that webcam that now you can have where it records students. There are two classes that kind of worry me because I tried Canvas at home one time and I'm pretty sure that there was some sharing of information among some of the students. So I think that I may add the webcam for that class, but pretty much everything will be on Canvas. One of the classes I teach is drawing on computer for engineering drawing, so that's all they have to do is submit the drawing on Canvas. For my math-related course, what I did previously was have the students take a picture of their calculations and upload them to Canvas. And then I grade from there using rubrics.
One thing I know, it'll be very interesting for all of us as professors to think about after this ends and we can go back to what it used to be, how we might think about exams differently. One of the things that I'm finding in my head, admittedly, my discipline is different than some disciplines. There's not a whole lot of important questions in my discipline that I think a student needs to be able to answer, just like that right now. One of the things I'm finding is, if it's a really important and interesting question in political science, maybe we should sit and think about it a little bit. I myself am going more to take-home exams this term, sort of replacing that in-class thing. I mentioned this to a colleague of mine who teaches in the School of Nursing, and he said to me, yeah, in my field, you really have to know the dosage of a particular drug at a particular moment. That's not something that you can go home and think about for 30 minutes. So I think a lot of what we're going to do is going to be very discipline and class specific. And if I may just make a comment here, as I'm seeing a lot of the questions that are coming in, many of the things that you're asking, and these are really great questions that you're asking, a lot of these are the kinds of things that are really going to be up to individual professors. And I think that there really is no substitute if you've got a question about something course specific. Really ask your professor, because the university and the administration is not really saying to all of us, all of you have to do this in this way. There's a lot of freedom that professors have to teach their classes in their way. So I think, I would advise students, if you have specific questions about how something is handled, find ways to, to communicate directly with your professor about it. I want to throw out a question that's really been on my mind a lot, thinking about this coming fall semester. I really, as a teacher, have prided myself over the years on really trying to create a great sense of community in my classroom, that my students get to know each other. There's lots of group works and think, pair, shares and things like that. I love it when students become friends in my class and stay friends for years to come. That's harder to do in an atmosphere that is more online. And yet, I really think it's even more important than it ever was for students to be making these connections with their fellow students, to be avoiding the isolation that COVID has forced upon many of us. What types of things are you doing in your class to help create this community? And what types of things would you advise students to do on their own to build these communities? And maybe I'll open it up, and if any of my colleagues want to kind of throw their hands up and jump into this one, because I'd love to hear what people are doing, because I'm struggling with this one myself.
If I can start, I have a lot of teamwork in my classes, lots and lots of teamwork. With lots and lots of different teams. I like to change them up so that they get to know, especially because they're freshmen mostly. I want them to know everybody in the class. So I will be using the Zoom breakout rooms to have them work together, at least virtually. Plus, there will be team projects where they will have to interact outside of our regularly scheduled classes.
Yeah, and I guess I'll add on to that. I do the same as Fernelise and I have said. But students have access to Zoom just like we do, so they can set up their own meetings. So what I will encourage my students to do is to set up study groups using either Zoom or whatever sort of video conferencing platform that they prefer. But there's they absolutely should do that and can do that. And so in addition, in my classes, there's some projects that students have to collaborate on, not just in class, but out of class. And so that's helpful for building teams and camaraderie.
Jessica, can I come in?
Well,
Professor Elton, I know that communication's all about getting people talking to each other.
No, I think it's a really good question, and I think it can be a challenge in terms of building communities in online classrooms. Discussion boards, I think, are oftentimes sort of seen as the way to do that. I think students have mixed feelings about discussion boards. They can be a useful way to engage the material in a sort of, discussion format. One of the things that I'm going to try to do this semester is use more video discussions. So Flipgrid, it sort of absolves students from having to craft, a written response to questions, but also I think that being able to see a video of someone responding, that's, it kind of gives you a sense of who they are. And so that's one of the things I'm going to try this semester is for those who are comfortable trying to incorporate a little bit kind of video so we can see you, and I talk with my hands a lot, so maybe we'll get to see some of your little quirks when you communicate. So those types of things just also take students away from the constant typing and maybe give them a chance to kind of just talk.
One of the things, Michael, can I just cut in for one quick thing and then go to you? I think one thing to just point out here is all of us on this screen went into this business because we like working with students and we like getting to know the students that we are teaching. So we are cherishing opportunities to get to know you as much as we hope you're cherishing opportunities to get to know us. And we're also maybe a little bit modest enough to realize that, in fact, you might not be cherishing these opportunities to get to know us, but we're pretty cool. We're pretty cool. Professor McVey?
In the face-to-face classes, I do like to record the students when they first come in. They introduce themselves very, very briefly. And now I'm using Flipgrid, so they can do it at their own pace. They can redo and redo until they get it just right. And it's always a delight to get a sense of who they are right from the beginning. Also, some of the early assignments are, introductory assignments, like compulsory figure skating. Make sure you can skate in a circle. I want to make sure you know how to do a simple PowerPoint, that sort of thing. And they use that opportunity to share about themselves. So yeah, it's quite doable. And as the course progresses, we build on that information. I learn little quirks and little bits and pieces about them. Like in your class, Dr. Bernstein, I'm sure they all discover that you're a Mets fan or a Yankees fan or one of those teams, right? And it must be difficult this year.
It's being a Mets fan is incredibly difficult, but it is on the syllabus. It's we're all breaking down that fourth wall. And I will say one thing here, and I don't know how my colleagues feel about this, but I personally, if we are doing something on Zoom or doing anything involving videos, you're in my class, your dogs and your cats are always welcome on the screen. It's really one of the very cool things I think about this. And your dogs and cats are always welcome to come to class. So then lets me go home and say to my department head, yeah, I taught 40 today in class. Only 25 were enrolled, but 40 were there. So, so one thing that I know a number of you have been talking about that I wanted to mention is the courses in Canvas will be available to you starting on Monday. Those are closed to students right now as faculty are doing their last-minute preparations and populating the Canvas shells, but they will be available Monday. Your professors may or may not have sent syllabi out to you by this point, but they should most likely be available on Canvas so that you should know early on by next week just what you've gotten yourselves into. And in some cases, as I said, you probably have. But if you're going to Canvas and you're looking and you're not finding what you're hoping for now. The shells are not open. I also want to say, in response to a few questions we've got, just to make sure we're all on the same page here, the email you got earlier this week talked about how any in-person classes, with a few exceptions, but the majority of in-person classes are meeting online for the next 3 weeks. No decision has been made beyond that. So after September 20th, some of your classes that were going to be in person might switch back to in person. They might not. Pay attention, keep up with your professors, keep checking your email to get to know about that. So other questions about, if you're working with students and they're really struggling with the material and they're just really having a hard time with it, what are some resources, in addition, obviously, to talking to the professor, what are some resources we might be able to recommend to students if they're having trouble with material in your course? Professor Barragan, do you want to start us off on this one?
I think it's important for every student to know that there are librarians in our library that are what are considered content experts. And if you are struggling with something in particular, want to learn more about something, that's always one resource that you can go to. They will meet with you virtually, and so that's something you might be able to do. But as a professor with a particular content, with what's happening in the class, if somebody is struggling, I always encourage students to reach out to their classmates as well. That you might learn that other students are struggling with some of the same issues. And somebody had said earlier that if you don't tell us, we don't know. So I know one of the things that I do is that if students ask questions about an assignment or content they don't understand, then that's my prompt to be able to explain it in a more clear way. There are tutoring and writing services that are available on campus as well. So anything that you're struggling with, there is a resource that we can point you towards, or that we can provide you more information with. I know that when students ask me questions that have to do with an assignment or content, I will put it on the discussion board. And then somebody who maybe doesn't feel comfortable contacting me with a question might be able to look on the discussion board and say, I'm not the only one having this problem, or they answered my question. And sometimes that can help as well. So number one resource is your professor, and they will be able to guide you in the right direction to get some help. But the library has great resources. Our writing center is amazing. And there's something on campus that can help you with whatever your issues are.
Can I jump in there?
Professor Lindsay?
Yeah, someone from the science departments are those that students often need a little extra help in for whatever reason. And so we're aware of this. And so in chemistry, we work pretty hard to move our tutoring to online. And so I am fairly certain math and physics have done the same. So those resources are available specifically in the departments. If the professor doesn't make you aware of them, ask him or her if those resources are available. They typically are. So there's a math lab, there's physics tutoring, and there's also chemistry tutoring for any level course, whether it's for non-majors or if you're a major in one of those disciplines, you can go to the department and get help. But the first stop should really always be your professor, and then they can point you in the right direction.
I want to put a quick plug in here that in many classes, professors use what are known as supplemental instructors, who are undergraduate students who have taken the class before and done well in the class, and then come back the following semester and help with some tutoring or running review sessions or things like that. So I want to put it in as a plug in two ways. First of all, if you are struggling in your class, your professor might have a supplemental instructor working with them who's another resource for you. But also, if you are doing well in a particular class, this might be something to think about down the road, possibly becoming a supplemental instructor and getting some opportunities to do that. So I guess as we're nearing the end of our time, I thought what I'd do is do just a little 1-minute wrap up from each of you. And I guess the question I want to throw out to each of you is, as we're sitting here talking to around 200 or so students who are coming in, starting a semester that's going to be largely online, what is the one biggest piece of advice you can offer to them to make this semester as successful as it can possibly be for them? And maybe I'll let you throw up your hands, panelists, when you have a good answer in mind, so I don't put anybody on the spot here. One big piece of advice.
I have two. Learn how to use Google Calendar or some sort of calendaring application. Figure out when the assignments are due, work yourself back in time to figure out as much time as you'll need. Get it out there, get yourself on top of things. It's so easy to fall behind. It's so easy to think that online education is going to be easier. You may save some time on the commute, but it'll catch up to you if you miss a deadline or two. Trust me, it will hurt. So get as far as that as possible, and and I'll just leave it at that. Good luck.
I know when my son started high school and all the teachers were talking about time management, it got a little old, but let me tell you, everything any teacher has ever told you about time management is going to be a very, very big thing in college in general, but I particularly think for a semester like this one. Anybody else have thoughts?
On that topic, though, it's interesting. A lot of professors try to be nice, and they give you a little extra a few days to get something in. And then what happens is every single assignment for every one of your classes is due on the same day. It gives the professor plenty of time to grade, but it doesn't give you much time. So professors need to watch out for that. Students need to be careful too. I mean, look at all of your coursework. Now I'll say thank you and good luck.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Yeah, so I guess in the spirit of doing things in a timely manner, ask for help when you need it, as soon as you need it. As we have all said, your professors, are probably your best first resource, but we will find whatever help you need and point you toward it. But don't wait, because you can fall behind. So definitely ask for things as you need them, and we will help you.
I think along
Like
those, maybe echoing both, I'm usually, I like students to be proactive. So if you see that there's something going on, or if you're struggling to meet a deadline, I'm usually super flexible if my students reach out to me in advance of deadlines. I mean, yes, it can pose the problem that if I give you a couple extra days, it's not to say that it's going to push all of the other assignments back a couple days, right? But if you do find that you need the time, or if you find that you're struggling, reach out early. But also, I think for students who aren't used to online learning, and even for professors who aren't used to teaching fully online, this is kind of a scary semester maybe for a lot of people. And in a lot of ways, maybe just take a deep breath and embrace the medium and do your best.
I will add to that, because I was thinking about the same thing about proactive, and along with that, take initiative. Don't wait for other people to tell you what you need to do. Make sure you study your Canvas site, your syllabus, your schedule, that you know when things need to happen, what your projects entail. One of the problems that I encounter the most, especially in teams, is somebody complaining that a team member is not doing enough work. And then that person will say, well, I've done everything they told me to do. Well, that's not necessarily enough. So with a virtual class, it might be a little more difficult to have those interactions unless you take the initiative and get started. Don't wait for other people to tell you, lay out for you, this is A, B, and C, what you need to do. Figure it out.
Yeah. And I think to just kind of add on to everything is on that first day, because I'm seeing a lot of questions about Canvas and when people will be expecting their syllabus. On that first day, it opens up at midnight on Monday or Sunday. And get in Canvas open the syllabus and start reading it. Familiarize yourself with what's in Canvas. We're going to have links in Canvas for all of the things we're going to be using. There's a lot of features that are in Canvas that you can familiarize yourself with. There's nothing you can't undo. So, just get familiar, make sure everything works, and then get very familiar with the Control F feature. Most of our syllabi are in a PDF, and if you have a question about an assignment, put in a keyword, Control F, due date, and all the due dates it'll pop you through all the due dates. And that can save you some frustration, that can save you some time waiting for a response for us to just say, well, it's in the syllabus. And if it's not in the syllabus, then, we need to make sure that you have all the information you need. But that very first day, just dig into Canvas. Don't worry so much about what the content of the class is. That very first day, get in there and just get familiar with Canvas, get familiar with your syllabus, and then the professor will be able to respond to assignment-specific questions and things like that. But the technology and the mechanisms are really important, especially that first day.
I'd like to add one more thing, and I think if you've been listening to my colleagues here, this has become readily apparent to you. Your professors want you to do well. It is far easier for us to grade a good paper. It is far happier and more satisfying for us to grade a good paper. We want you to do well. Now, we have standards that we have to face. We can't just give away the credits for our class. We can't give away A's, but we want you to do well. And we are going to work to help you and to try to encourage you to do well and to make it possible for you to do as well as you can. It's a different format than many of you are used to. It's a different format than many of us are used to right now. But we are committed to helping you do well. And I can't emphasize enough what all of my colleagues have said here. Reach out to us. That's what we're here for. That's what we like doing in the job. And help us to help you make this a successful semester. So on behalf of the Center for E-Learning and the Office of Admissions, I'd like to thank my colleagues for joining us today. Thank you all. I've learned a lot from you, and I've enjoyed having the chance to have this conversation. And thank you to all of you who have been with us today. I hope you found some useful information here, and we're looking forward to seeing you in our classes in the semesters to come. So thank you, everybody. Take care.